Welcome, restless dreamer. You've just stepped into the shadows of sleep, where stories whisper and the darkness listens. I'm your guide tonight, your voice in the void, here to lead you gently into nightmares wrapped in lullabies. Before we begin, press like if you're brave enough, and subscribe for more midnight tales that blur the line between sleep and terror. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what hour has found you? Loneliness has a quiet way of settling in. It doesn't announce itself with a crash or a scream. It slips into the empty corners of your life, weaving into your routines, until one day you realize you haven't laughed properly in months. That was me in Philadelphia, working as a graphic designer from my apartment. Remote work sounded ideal on paper. No commute, flexible hours. But in reality, it meant days that blurred into each other, punctuated only by the hum of my laptop and the faint, monotonous noise of the city outside my window. Friends had moved on with their lives. Instagram had become a gallery of their weddings, vacations, and baby showers. I'd scroll past, smiling politely at the photos, but inside, I felt hollow. Weekends became ritualistic. A glass of wine, a series I barely watched, maybe an occasional dinner alone at a nearby bistro. I told myself I liked the solitude, that independence was enough, but the truth was, I craved connection. It was on one of those lonely Friday nights, after a couple of glasses of Cabernet and a half-forgotten movie, that I downloaded Tinder again. I had deleted it a year ago after a string of disappointing, awkward encounters, but tonight, loneliness had overridden reason. My thumb hovered over the icon, a mix of shame and curiosity twisting my stomach. I swiped through profiles, mostly dull or cliched, until one stopped me cold. Evan. His pictures felt real, untouched. One showed him laughing on a hiking trail, sunlight catching his messy hair. Another captured him by a beach bonfire, flames reflecting in his eyes. The last was a blurry shot in a coffee shop, him reading a dog-eared paperback, a thin leather bracelet visible on his wrist. But what really drew me in was his bio. Time is the only thing we can't get back. Let's not waste it. It wasn't the usual vague travel and foodie nonsense. It felt intentional, meaningful. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to avoid disappointment, but curiosity won. I swiped right. Immediately, a notification popped up. It was a match. My heart skipped. A bubble appeared. So, what does a girl like you do on a Friday night in Philly besides swiping on Tinder? I laughed. The first real laugh in months. Mostly avoiding bad dates. You? Trying not to be one of those bad dates? Drinks tomorrow night? I blinked. Straightforward, confident, almost disarmingly normal. I agreed. Over the next hour, we exchanged texts, learning bits and pieces about each other. He'd grown up in Australia, had been traveling across the US for the past year, staying in hostels and Airbnbs. He loved surfing, hated small talk, and lived by a philosophy of not delaying life's experiences. By midnight, we had agreed to meet the next evening at a bar in Old City. I spent hours choosing my outfit, a forest green blouse, black jeans, wanting to look casual, but not careless. The next night, nerves churned in my stomach as I walked into the bar. Warm yellow lights bounced off liquor bottles behind the counter. Neon signs flickered, and the chatter of patrons filled the space. I found a table near the entrance and ordered a martini, glancing around impatiently. Minutes stretched into an hour. I scanned every corner, waiting for Evan, but no one matched the photos I had seen online. Two men approached with drinks offers, both brushed off with polite smiles. My martini sat untouched, melting slowly. Finally, frustration pushed me to text him. Hey, where are you? I've been waiting over an hour. No reply. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. Anger boiled inside me as I left, storming through the rain-soaked streets back to my apartment. My head spun, mind racing with embarrassment and irritation. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. I was there. Didn't see you. Here's proof. Attached was a photo of the bar, the crowd bustling, familiar lighting. My stomach dropped. I stared at the image. I had scanned that room a dozen times. Where could he have been? Near the jukebox, he replied. I froze. I had been near the entrance, my view clear. I didn't see him. Something didn't add up. He apologized, explaining maybe we'd simply missed each other in the crowd. Against my instincts, I agreed to meet again. The following day, a quiet cafe near Washington Square. I arrived early, settled by a rain-specked window, latte in hand. Minutes ticked by. Evan didn't arrive. My frustration mounted. Another message arrived. Here, same time, different table. A photo of the cafe interior, time-stamped minutes ago. My heart raced. He had taken a photo from inside the cafe, yet I hadn't seen him. That night, frustration and confusion made me block his number, delete the conversation. I convinced myself it was a catfish, a prank, or just someone obsessed with games. Tinder disappeared from my phone. Months passed. Life regained a rhythm. Then one night at a Fishtown club with friends, I saw him, or someone identical. Tousled hair, leather bracelet, that same impossible grin. My heart jolted. I pushed through the crowd, but by the time I reached the spot, he was gone. Curiosity and fear gnawed at me. I unblocked his number, called. No ring. Then a message buzzed. A photo of the nightclub from behind, time-stamped that night. Just wanted to see you again. I owe you answers. Before I could respond, another photo arrived. A news article. Australian traveler found dead in Philadelphia hostel, identified as 28-year-old Evan Walsh, believed to be the fourth victim in suspected dating app poisonings. The photo was unmistakable. His grin, his leather bracelet, the date of death months earlier. My hands trembled. My apartment felt suddenly cold, the shadows stretching longer, menacing. Then another buzz. A photo, taken from behind me. Me on the couch, phone in hand, horror carved into my face. I turned slowly. The apartment was empty except for something on the floor, a leather bracelet. I froze, staring at the leather bracelet lying on my rug. My fingers hovered over it, trembling, as if touching it would confirm all my worst fears. My apartment felt impossibly quiet, yet heavy, like the walls themselves were watching me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but curiosity and terror kept my legs rooted to the spot. I picked it up slowly, turning it over in my hand. Familiar, worn, unmistakable. It wasn't a replica. It was his. My mind raced. How could this be? Evan had been dead for months, or at least that was what the news reported. And yet, here he was, or something of him. The thought made my blood run cold. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again. Another message. My hands shook as I unlocked it. Glad you found it. You're finally ready. I dropped the phone. The sound of it hitting the floor echoed through the apartment. My eyes darted around the room. The shadows seemed to twist, to elongate toward me. I wanted to scream, to run, but my voice caught in my throat. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I grabbed my keys and ran to the door, yanking it open. The hallway was empty, silent except for the hum of the refrigerator from my kitchen. No one was there. I ran to the living room, thinking I might find a hidden intruder, but it was empty, except for the bracelet, lying there as if placed with intention. I backed away, panic overtaking me. My phone buzzed again. Another photo, taken from the corner of the room. It was me, frozen in terror, staring at the bracelet. My apartment had been empty the whole time. No one else should have been there, and yet someone, or something, had been. I ran to the window, peering out into the darkened street below. No one. The city hummed as usual, oblivious to the terror inside my apartment. I locked the door, double-checked the windows, then sank to the floor, clutching the bracelet like a lifeline. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. My eyes never left the bracelet. The fear had a tight grip around my chest, squeezing every ounce of rational thought. And then I heard it. A soft scraping noise from the balcony. My head snapped up. Nothing. My heart raced, every instinct screaming at me to leave. But I was trapped in that apartment by my own disbelief. Slowly, I crept toward the balcony door, each step measured and silent. The air smelled faintly metallic, faintly of smoke, the same scent I had imagined in his photos. The door was locked. Nothing, just the faint echo of something outside, beyond the rail. I forced myself to breathe, trying to calm the panic rising inside me. And then I saw it, a shadow, gliding across the neighboring building's wall, impossibly tall, impossibly thin. It stopped. Its shape seemed to turn toward me. I stumbled backward. The bracelet slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Another buzz, another photo, taken from the balcony, taken from behind me. I hadn't been on the balcony. My blood ran cold. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't dare. I sat in the corner of my living room, clutching the bracelet, phone in hand, praying I was imagining things. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant hum of the city sounded amplified, sinister. Hours later, as dawn crept through the blinds, I thought I might have survived the night, but I hadn't. Weeks passed. I moved apartments, changed numbers, even left the city for a while. Nothing worked. No matter where I went, the bracelet found me, or rather, he found me. Photos, messages, glimpses in crowds, in reflection, in the shadows of windows, always there, always watching. One night, back in a small apartment in New Jersey, I came home to find a package slipped under my door. No return address. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside, the bracelet, neatly coiled, and a note in spidery handwriting. We're meant to be together forever. I threw it across the room. Shattered glass from the vase caught the light, but I barely noticed. My pulse was deafening. I wanted to leave, to run anywhere, everywhere. But something in me, fear, fascination, something I can't explain, kept me rooted. That night, sleep claimed me despite my terror, and in my dreams, he came. Evan, or the thing wearing his face, the same tousled hair, the piercing eyes, that grin that had once made my heart race. He whispered my name over and over, a lullaby that chilled me to the bone. I woke to my apartment dark, silent, but for the bracelet lying on my nightstand. I hadn't touched it. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Hours passed before I dared look at my phone. Messages, dozens of them, stacked on top of each other, sent while I slept. Each contained a single phrase. I see you. I left again, packing my life into a car and driving aimlessly. Motel rooms, small towns, gas stations in the middle of nowhere. Everywhere I went, a glimpse of him, or something of him, waited. A shadow outside a window, a figure in the reflection of a shop glass, always watching, always patient. Eventually I realized it wasn't about distance. It wasn't about phones or apartments. It was about time. The way he had written in his bio, time is the only thing we can't get back. He wasn't bound by normal rules. He existed in fragments, in echoes, in photographs, in messages that shouldn't exist. He was everywhere and nowhere, and there was no escaping him. Years passed, though I cannot say how many. I stopped trying to explain it, stopped telling friends. I stopped looking outside. I stopped trusting any reflection. The bracelet remains on my dresser, a silent, menacing reminder that some connections are permanent. I dare not touch it, yet I cannot bring myself to throw it away. And sometimes, when the city hums quietly in the early hours, I hear the faint buzz of a message, a new photo, a silhouette in the dark, the soft click of a door opening where no door exists. I have learned one thing. He will never leave. He doesn't need to. Time belongs to him now, and I belong to him. No one believes me. No one can. And I suspect they never will. Every time I think of removing the bracelet, of trying to sever the connection, I feel it. The same weight, the same pulse, the same inevitability that he whispered in those photos long ago. We're meant to be together forever. I cannot escape. I cannot fight. And he is still here, always here, watching, waiting, patient. I never thought I'd be the type to use a dating app, but after my last breakup, my life felt like it was crumbling in slow motion. Years of shared apartments, shared bills, and shared dreams had vanished when she left me for someone more stable. I wasn't looking for stability. I wanted distraction, excitement, validation. Most nights, I would scroll through profiles in bed until my eyes hurt, swiping left and right, hoping for a spark, anything to make me feel noticed again. That's when I saw Clara. Her profile stood out immediately. No over-the-top filters, no awkward selfies. Just 3 simple, candid photos. Her on a porch swing in the sunlight, leaning against a jukebox laughing, and a close-up of her face, sharp features and piercing green eyes. Her smirk looked like she was hiding a secret, and her short bio intrigued me even more. Divorced, collector of stories, fan of loud guitars and quiet nights. Don't waste my time. I swiped right instantly. The match notification made my chest tighten with anticipation. Our first messages were playful, almost effortless. Me, collector of stories, huh? That sounds dangerous. Clara, only if you become one of them. Me, guess I'm willing to take that risk. Clara, good. Most men bore me in minutes. You have until Friday to prove you're different. She suggested a bar she liked. The Rusted Lantern, a dive tucked into an older part of town. That night, the rain fell steadily, turning streets into mirrors, and I almost texted her to cancel. But something in her messages, her confidence, her wit, pulled me in. I had to meet her. When I walked into the bar, the scent of wood polish, fried food, and stale beer hit me immediately. Neon beer signs cast a dim glow across the room. And then I saw her. Clara was in the corner booth, half-shadowed under the low amber light, hair loose, eyes scanning the jukebox. When she looked up and smiled, it was as if she had been expecting me. "Ethan," she said, standing and leaning in for a kiss on the cheek. "Clara," I replied, caught off guard by the warmth in her voice. She waved me into the booth and signaled the bartender. Conversation flowed more easily than I expected. We spoke about our favorite albums, movies we grew up with, and even the weird habits of our families. She told me she had seen the Rolling Stones live. I joked that I'd missed out because my uncle wouldn't take me. She laughed, eyes lighting up. For the first time in months, I felt present, alive. The chaos of the bar, the screaming, the laughter, the music, was intoxicating. By the 3rd drink, she leaned closer, brushing her hand against mine. "I should warn you," she said softly. "I don't do the whole boyfriend-girlfriend routine. I like moments, nights, memories, not promises." "That sounds perfect," I said without hesitation. She tilted her head, studying me. "Good. You don't seem like the type to bore me." As the bar began to thin, she suggested we leave. Her car was parked nearby, an old black sedan that smelled faintly of vanilla and cigarettes. She drove with one hand on the wheel, tapping the other against her thigh in rhythm with the music. Her home was in a quiet neighborhood, an older Victorian-style bungalow with pale green paint peeling slightly around the edges. Stepping inside, I felt a strange mix of awe and unease. The living room was beautiful but peculiar. Dark wood paneling, heavy curtains, a fireplace lined with black and white photographs, and a cream-colored rug that stood out like a foreign object. "You live here alone?" I asked, glancing around. She poured whiskey into 2 glasses. "Alone now. The house was part of the divorce settlement." I hesitated. "Sorry, I didn't mean—" She shrugged. "Don't be. He left. I stayed. That's all that matters." We sat on the couch, sipping whiskey. Her hand brushed mine again, lingering this time. She studied me closely. "You have this look," she said, tilting her head. "Like you're trying to decide if you're lucky or stupid for being here." "Maybe both," I chuckled nervously. "Good answer," she whispered, leaning closer. Our lips met, the world outside fading. But then a wave of nausea hit me, sudden and violent. I doubled over, vomiting onto the cream-colored rug. The room went silent. Clara froze, staring at the mess. For a moment, her face was unreadable. Then it twisted into anger. "You idiot!" she snapped, leaping up. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" I'm sorry," I stammered. "The one thing in this house that isn't a reminder of him," she hissed, grabbing a towel. "And you ruined it." Her voice cracked with fury. I tried to help, but she shoved me back. "Just leave," she said, trembling with rage. I muttered another apology, grabbed my jacket, and stumbled out into the cool night air. My head was spinning, my stomach still churning. I didn't look back. Years passed, but I could never forget that night. Clara's smile, her piercing green eyes, and that cream-colored rug haunted me like a specter. I tried to move on. Jobs changed. Apartments changed. A few casual relationships. But every time I saw a Victorian-style house or smelled vanilla and cigarette smoke, my stomach twisted. I told myself I was lucky to have walked out. But luck felt thin, fragile, like it could vanish at any moment. Life eventually became routine. I got promoted at work, dated other women, and convinced myself the world was mostly normal. Yet, at night, memories of Clara's house and her sudden fury would creep back into my mind. Her voice, sharp and trembling, echoed in my head. "You ruined it." I shivered every time I pictured that cream-colored rug. The thought that it might have been made from something sinister gnawed at me, though I tried to push it away. Then, one evening, as I sat on my couch scrolling through local news, my stomach sank. A familiar face appeared on the screen. Clara. The mugshot showed her pale, hardened, her eyes cold and unblinking. My heart raced as the anchor described the case. "Authorities have arrested 38-year-old Clara Bennett after discovering a hidden basement in her home containing evidence of multiple kidnappings and torture. Investigators say Bennett lured young men through dating apps, using her charm and wit to gain their trust. Forensic teams report the cream-colored rug in her living room was made from human skin." The world tilted. I saw that rug in my mind, the rug I had vomited on, the one that didn't match the rest of her decor. My hands shook uncontrollably. I realized how close I had come, how narrowly I had escaped becoming one of her victims. Every detail of that night, the whiskey, the nausea, my clumsiness, had saved my life. I called Tara, my best friend, and relayed everything. She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "Ethan, you survived. That's all that matters." But I couldn't shake the images. The realization that I had once been so dangerously naive, so blind to the darkness behind a smile. The news coverage was relentless. They showed images of her house, evidence bags, chains, tools, and journals filled with twisted notes. The basement looked like a chamber of nightmares. I recognized it instantly in my mind. The layout, the heavy shadows, the way the air must have smelled down there. The thought of it made me physically ill. I couldn't stop imagining what she might have done to others, how many hadn't been as fortunate as I had. For weeks after the news, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my apartment sounded like footsteps. Every shadow seemed to move just out of the corner of my eye. I would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced that Clara had somehow found a way to follow me, that her obsession hadn't ended behind bars. Even though I knew she was locked away, the terror she had instilled lingered like a second skin. I tried therapy. I sought help to unpack the trauma, to rationalize the fear, to rebuild trust in the world. It helped a little, but sometimes late at night, I still hear her voice in my memory, that husky, commanding tone. "You ruined it," and I remember her smirk, the intensity in her eyes, and I feel that same chill of dread. Years later, even after moving across the country, avoiding dating apps and keeping to myself, Clara's shadow loomed. I saw headlines about other dating app predators, and my heart would race as I imagined her in the guise of someone else. My experience had taught me that charm can hide monsters, that a captivating smile can mask horror, and that sometimes survival comes down to the smallest, most unpredictable accidents. I occasionally tell the story to close friends as a cautionary tale, how a simple date, a moment of trust, could have ended in death. Their eyes widen, some laugh nervously, but I can see it. The fear, the realization that monsters aren't always obvious. And for me, it never fades. I know I will never truly feel safe in a world full of hidden intentions, of perfect smiles and sparkling eyes that might conceal something monstrous. Even now, when I walk past a shadowed porch or hear the faint scent of vanilla mixed with smoke, my stomach twists, and I feel that same nausea I felt that night. It's a reminder, a warning. Survival doesn't erase fear, it sharpens it. And though I escaped Clara Bennett's house alive, part of her, her obsession, her darkness, will always linger in the corners of my mind, whispering that some people hide monsters behind perfection, and some moments of thrill can almost be your last. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to turn to a dating app. After years in a serious relationship, the quiet nights alone in my apartment felt foreign, almost suffocating. My ex, Haley, and I had shared everything, from our favorite pizza place to weekend road trips. And then, slowly, she disappeared from my life without a fight. One evening, she looked me in the eye and simply said she didn't love me the way she used to. That was it. No shouting, no cheating, no drama, just silence stretching over everything we'd built together. The weeks that followed were a blur. I went to work, came home, ate dinner alone, scrolled through my phone, and went to bed. My apartment, a small 2-bedroom on the edge of Dayton, Ohio, became a cage of my own making. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the quiet was so loud it pressed against my ears, my chest, my mind. My friends tried to pull me out. Caleb, my closest friend, kept calling, inviting me to bars, to road trips, to anything. And finally, one night, fueled by boredom and frustration, I downloaded Tinder. At first it felt ridiculous. The profiles, the selfies, the carefully curated bios. I laughed at all of it. But a week into mindless swiping, I matched with her. Selena, brown hair, hazel eyes, a half smile that looked like she was hiding a secret. Her bio was short, but somehow it drew me in. I like people who don't rush conversations. Stargazing greater than bars. Ask me something real. I asked her what something real meant. She didn't hesitate. She asked about the first time I'd broken my arm at the county fair, about the stupidest mistake I'd made in middle school, about the worst job I'd ever had, and I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone in years. Our messages stretched into hours, bouncing from childhood memories to embarrassing confessions. I laughed at my phone more in that week than I had in months. Then she suggested meeting. Not a coffee shop, not a bar, but a field on the outskirts of the city. No lights, no traffic. You can see the stars like nowhere else. Bring a hoodie. It gets chilly. My family's owned the land for decades. Promise it's safe. I hesitated, of course. Meeting someone in the middle of nowhere sounded like the start of a horror story. But the pull of her conversation, the distraction from my lonely nights, was too strong. I agreed. The night of the date, I cleaned my truck like I was prepping for a job interview, vacuumed floors, tossed empty cans, sprayed a little cologne. My nerves hummed through me. By 8 p.m., I pulled into the gravel lot she'd described. Selena was already there, leaning casually against her car, wearing a faded jean jacket over a black hoodie, smiling like I was someone she'd known forever. "You actually showed up?" she teased. "You thought I wouldn't?" I asked, trying to hide the nervous energy buzzing under my skin. Her laugh was soft but carried weight, like she'd said that line before. She guided me down the winding dirt path to the field. Streetlights disappeared behind us, and the darkness swallowed everything except the beam of my headlights. When we arrived, the stars stretched across the sky, crisp and clear, untouched by city lights. Fireflies blinked in the brush along the tree line. Deer flickered like shadows, and for a moment, it felt perfect. We leaned against the bed of my truck, swapping stories, laughing at stupid childhood memories. I could almost feel the weight of my breakup lifting off my shoulders. And then I noticed them. Headlights, dim at first, slowly rolling toward us from the distance. "Are we expecting anyone?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Selena squinted. "Not that I know of." The van grew closer, a boxy white vehicle, headlights uneven. My chest tightened. My instincts screamed at me. I told her to stay in the truck, flashlight in hand, and stepped forward to get a better look. The driver's door creaked. A tall man, broad shoulders, scruffy beard, mid-30s maybe, stepped out, calm, almost polite, but my skin crawled. "You folks know this is private property?" I forced a smile. "We're just stargazing. Didn't mean to trespass." He studied me a beat too long, then nodded. "Fair enough. Had some trouble with poachers. Don't want anyone shooting deer." And just like that, he slipped back into the van and drove off. Relief washed over me. But when I turned back, Selena was glued to her phone, thumbs flying. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just texting a friend," she said sharply. Her focus, her tone, it didn't match the playful girl I'd met online. Unease settled in my stomach. I tried to brush it off, tried to keep the mood light, but something had shifted. An hour later, the headlights appeared again, faster this time. The van screeched to a stop inches from my bumper. I threw the truck into reverse, heart hammering, trying to create space, and then Selena flung open her door and ran toward the van. "What the hell, Selena?" I shouted, disbelief cracking my voice. The man from before, same scruffy beard, now twisted with a sinister intent, stepped out, and then it hit me. I had been set up. Selena sprinted toward him, and my chest burned. Heat and betrayal coiling together. My instincts kicked in. I reached for the concealed pistol in my jacket. My training as a security officer screamed at me not to draw too soon. But Bob, the man's name later, wasn't hesitating. He slammed me backward, knocking the wind out of me. Dirt filled my mouth. "Stay down," he growled. Selena pulled a metal pipe from the van, her face a mix of panic and resolve. "Don't make it harder than it has to be. Give us your wallet." I shook my head, tasting anger and disbelief. She had set me up. But before I could react further, adrenaline took over. I rolled, scrambled to my feet, and drew the gun. "Police!" I barked. My voice cut through the night. Everything froze. Bob bolted toward the van. Selena hesitated, then chased after him. I ran in the opposite direction, branches clawing at my arms, boots pounding the dirt, my heart hammering in my ears. By the time I reached my truck, I floored it, gravel spitting from the tires, only stopping when I saw the faint glow of neighborhood streetlights. My hands shook as I called dispatch, telling them about the suspects and the stolen van. Minutes felt like hours before backup arrived. But by then, Bob and Selena had vanished into the night. The van remained, empty except for disturbing evidence. Duct tape, knives, handcuffs, dried blood, stolen plates, and a gun. I realized I had walked straight into a trap, and only luck had kept me alive. Even after I got back to my apartment, the night refused to leave me. Every shadow in the corners of my living room felt like Bob. Every creak in the floorboards a whisper from Selena. I couldn't sleep. My hands shook every time I reached for my coffee mug. Caleb called in the morning, asking how the date went. I lied, laughed it off. "Crazy night, man. Nothing to worry about." But I knew it wasn't nothing. That van, the weapons, the blood, it was real. And the fact that Selena had led me there, that cut deeper than any physical wound. I tried to piece it together logically. Who were they? How many people were involved? Were there others waiting in the woods that night? I went back to the field the next day with the detectives. The gravel lot was empty, eerily quiet. The dirt path showed traces of tire marks from the van, footprints from Bob, and a single set of smaller, lighter prints I assumed belonged to Selena. Beyond that, the field was untouched, the stars replaced by gray daylight and the smell of wet earth. They scoured the area, took photographs, collected everything, but there was nothing more, no trace of them. The weeks after were tense. I returned to work, pulled long night shifts, and avoided dating apps entirely. Every time I looked at my phone, I imagined Selena's smirk or Bob's shadowed face. I even started locking my apartment doors in the middle of the day, checking the peephole obsessively, seeing shapes in the bushes that weren't there. The paranoia gnawed at me, but I forced myself to function. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. Then came the nightmares. Every night I relived the scene. I saw the van approaching, headlights cutting through the dark. I felt the pull of Selena's hand toward the man with the knife. I ran through the woods, branches whipping my face, adrenaline pumping. And always at the end, the van would vanish into the trees, leaving only me and the echo of gunshots. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart hammering, shaking as I tried to convince myself it was over. Months later, a case file landed on my desk that made my blood run cold. A stolen van had been recovered near a different town. Inside, duct tape, handcuffs, knives, identical to what I had seen in the field that night. But the occupants were gone. There was no record of Selena or Bob ever existing under those names. It was as if they disappeared off the face of the earth. The detective handling the case looked at me grimly. "You were lucky. Most people in these situations don't walk away." Lucky. That word haunted me more than anything. Lucky meant surviving, but not unscathed. Lucky meant living with the knowledge that someone had lured me into a trap, that a part of me had trusted a stranger too much, and that those strangers were still out there, somewhere, planning the next trap for someone else. I tried to resume normal life, though it felt impossible. Friends noticed the change. How I flinched at sudden movements, how I avoided dark alleys, how I stared at the shadows in the corners of rooms. I stopped talking about my personal life, stopped trusting casual strangers. Dating apps? A joke now. Social events. Only with people I knew inside and out. The fear lingered, a ghost that refused to leave. And then, about a year later, I saw it again. Driving home from a late shift, headlights flickered in my rearview mirror. At first I thought it was just a car passing, but the pattern, the slow approach, the dim, uneven light, hit me like a punch. My pulse spiked. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The shape of the driver was familiar in the outline, the way he sat, broad shoulders squared. I drove faster, turned streets, took routes I didn't even know existed in that neighborhood. And then, gone. The van had vanished like smoke. I never saw Selena again either. The betrayal still stung, but in a twisted way it was a lesson. Some people aren't what they seem. Some smiles hide knives. And sometimes, survival isn't about strength or strategy. It's about instinct, the voice inside that tells you to run before it's too late. I carry the memory with me every day, not as a wound to dwell on, but as a warning. I still have my badge, still walk the city streets at night, still see danger in places others think are safe. And I still remember the flash of metal, the echo of gunshots in the trees, Selena's smirk as she betrayed me. I've rebuilt my life, cautiously. I go out, I laugh, I work. I even allow myself small moments of joy. But late at night, when the world is quiet and the shadows stretch across my apartment walls, I sometimes see him. Bob standing there, calm, confident, a ghostly figure in the dark, waiting for the next mark. And I remember that night, the field, the van, the betrayal, and I know the danger isn't over. It never is. The thing about that night, about Selena, about Bob, is that it's burned into me. A warning, a scar, a lesson. Some people won't understand why I never use dating apps, why I check over my shoulder on empty streets, why I flinch at headlights in the dark, but I do. Because I know the truth now. Strangers can be deadly. Smiles can hide malice. And sometimes the people you think are helping you are the ones who will hurt you the most. I survived, but I will never forget. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd rely on a dating app to fill the silence in my life. For years, I'd been in long-term relationships, and when the last one ended, I felt like I'd lost a piece of myself. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of Columbus, Ohio, trying to get back into some semblance of normalcy. My days were predictable. Wake up, fight through traffic, work at the dental clinic downtown, microwave something for dinner, then collapse onto the couch with my cat purring at my side. Nights were the hardest. The quiet pressed in like it wanted me to admit defeat. It was my coworker Maya who finally convinced me to take the plunge. "Come on, Sabrina," she said one evening as we closed up the clinic. "You're smart, funny, gorgeous. You shouldn't be going home just to stare at your ceiling every night." I laughed nervously. "Safe," I replied. "Online dating? Safe? Have you forgotten what happened with Derek?" She smirked. "Exactly why it's safer this way. You get to vet people before they're in your apartment." I hated that she was right. That night, I downloaded Tinder. My first few swipes were brutal. Endless selfies, awkward grins, and guys holding fish or guns like it was a contest. I nearly deleted it, but then his profile appeared. Nick, dark brown tousled hair, green eyes, a confident but approachable smile. His photos were simple: him hiking, a golden retriever at his side, a sunset in the background. Something about him felt genuine. I swiped right. Instant match. My stomach fluttered. The first week was surreal. His messages were light, funny, and attentive, never pushy. He asked about my day, my hobbies, even what I hated about winter in Ohio. We joked about grocery stores, complained about traffic, and compared our worst jobs. For the first time in weeks, I laughed at my phone instead of staring into the dark silence of my apartment. When he suggested meeting, it was simple. Coffee at a quiet shop on High Street. Public, safe, predictable. I arrived early, nerves buzzing, scanning the cafe until he walked in. Taller than his photo suggested, broader shoulders, that same easy smile. "Sabrina," he said, walking over. I stood to shake his hand. "No handshake," he laughed. "Come on, hugger." I chuckled and let him pull me in. The conversation flowed as though we'd known each other for years, not days. Hours passed like minutes. Our second date was a walk in a nearby park. The air was crisp, the trail quiet. He draped his jacket over my shoulders when I complained about the cold, teasing me for being cliché. I secretly liked it. By the time we parted, I felt a spark I hadn't felt in months. He suggested a third date at his place, a low-key night with wine and takeout. I hesitated for just a second, thinking about safety, but I wanted the connection, the warmth of human contact. I told myself he seemed trustworthy, harmless. Friday night, I dressed casually, jeans and a sweater, nothing fancy. His house looked normal, even comforting, with trimmed lawns and porch lights glowing softly. Nick greeted me with his signature smile. "Come on in. You like red wine, right?" The evening started innocently enough. Wine, laughter, stories about college, family, embarrassing moments. I felt a strange comfort in his presence, like nothing could go wrong. But then it hit me. Slow at first. Subtle. My head felt heavy. My words sluggish. My vision blurred. My chest tightened. My limbs grew weak. I froze, heart hammering, realization dawning. My drink had been spiked. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to remain calm. If he noticed, I'd be in far worse danger. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaky but steady. "Bathroom?" He nodded with a smile, pointing down the hall. Every step toward that door felt heavier than the last. Once inside, I locked it and slid to the floor, fumbling for my phone with trembling hands. I dialed, whispering my address, barely able to form coherent sentences. Minutes felt like hours as my consciousness wavered. Heavy footsteps, voices, and the sensation of a bag being pulled over my head were all I remembered before darkness swallowed me. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, light stabbing at my eyes, head pounding, throat dry. A nurse assured me I was safe. Over the next hours, pieces of the night fell into place. The police had stormed Nick's house minutes after my call. I had been found in the bathroom, barely conscious, and he was arrested. Objects in his living room hinted at a horrifying plan he'd prepared, but the details were withheld for my own protection. I realized then, chillingly, how monsters didn't always look like monsters. They often smiled, opened doors, and seemed harmless until it was almost too late. After the hospital, life felt different, though the normalcy I craved seemed impossible to reclaim. I returned to work, but every hallway, every patient, every hum of the fluorescent lights reminded me of how close I had come to something far darker than heartbreak. My co-workers were supportive, but no one could fully understand the mental weight I carried. I avoided social interactions outside work, deleted every dating app, and even stopped answering texts from friends who wanted to check in on my dating life. The world felt sharper, edges more dangerous, and every stranger I passed seemed to hide unknown intentions. Even at home, the apartment didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. The walls seemed thinner, the shadows longer. At night, I'd wake up sweating, heart hammering, seeing glimpses of Nick's smile over and over. The memory of that bag, the dark corridor, and the helplessness that had almost consumed me. Sometimes I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, my hands curled into fists, imagining what might have happened if the police hadn't arrived when they did. The thought alone was enough to make me gasp in terror. Days blurred into weeks. I stayed mostly to myself, venturing out only for work, groceries, and the rare visit to the park to try to reclaim a sense of freedom. I refused to date anyone, refused even to consider a relationship. My friends tried to help, inviting me out, offering casual hangouts, and gently suggesting it was time to move on. I smiled, nodded, and politely declined. How could I explain that the world had shifted overnight, that trust itself now felt like a dangerous gamble? Months later, the nightmare resurfaced in a way I hadn't anticipated. I had returned home from a long day at the clinic, exhausted and tense. The streetlights outside flickered as I unlocked my door. My cat greeted me, tail twitching, unaware of the weight I carried. I dropped my keys, peeled off my jacket, and settled onto the couch. That's when I noticed it. A note slipped under my door, printed in precise, unnerving handwriting. "You're still thinking about me, aren't you?" My stomach dropped. My hand shook as I picked it up. No signature, no clue who had left it, but the words alone were enough to send a cold, sharp pulse through me. I called the police immediately. They arrived quickly, checking the surrounding area, canvassing neighbors, but found nothing. No footprints, no discarded paper, nothing to trace. The note disappeared into evidence, yet the terror it invoked lingered. Someone knew where I lived. Someone had been watching. That night, sleep eluded me. I double-checked locks, windows, even the peephole on my front door. Every sound, the faint rustling of leaves, the distant hum of tires on asphalt, felt like a signal. By morning, my nerves were raw, and I realized I couldn't let this fear dominate my life. I started carrying my pepper spray in my bag, keeping the apartment well lit, and setting up motion sensor lights around the perimeter. But no measure felt enough. The memory of Nick's calculated calm, the way he had almost overpowered me, was embedded in my mind, a shadow I could never shake. Then, weeks later, a follow-up from the detectives reignited the horror in a way I wasn't prepared for. Nick's arrest had led them to uncover other crimes, other victims, women he had lured with charm, much like he had lured me. I had been lucky, but one detail they revealed sent a shiver down my spine. The living room setup he had prepared for me wasn't just a prop for assault. There were traces of restraints, makeshift devices, and the beginning of something much more sinister. The plan had been months in the making, perfectly calculated, and I had stumbled into it almost by chance. The realization left me jittery, almost paranoid. Every person I passed on the street, every friendly smile, felt like a potential threat. I found myself double-checking my car before driving, scanning every shadow in parking lots. The city had not changed, but I had. Every heartbeat was a reminder of vulnerability. Every glance over my shoulder a whisper of danger. Yet amidst this fear, a strange resilience began to grow. I refused to be paralyzed. I took self-defense classes, learned how to read situations, and trained my mind to anticipate and react. The police encouraged it, reminding me that survival didn't just depend on chance. It depended on awareness, preparation, and instinct. Slowly, I reclaimed some sense of control. Months turned into a year. The memories of that night, of Nick, and the terror he inflicted were still vivid, but they became part of my armor rather than my chains. I ventured out more cautiously, engaged with friends again, and even allowed myself small moments of joy, a good book at the cafe, a walk in the park during sunset. Trust was still difficult, but I learned that life, as fragile as it could be, demanded risk. Even so, there were nights when I couldn't escape the memory. When I closed my eyes, I would see Nick's grin, the moment the bag went over my head, and the rush of panic that had almost consumed me. Sometimes, I'd hear the echo of footsteps in empty hallways, or imagine shadows moving just beyond the lamplight. But the fear was different now, not paralyzing, but a reminder of what I had endured, what I had survived. In the end, I deleted every dating app permanently. I promised myself that no screen, no message, no smile, however charming, would lure me into danger again. Yet the story became a part of me, a silent warning to others, and a lesson carved deeply into my mind. Monsters don't always look monstrous. Sometimes they look like the person you think you can trust. Sometimes they wear the perfect smile and the calm voice, and they wait for you to let your guard down before showing their true nature. And though I survived, I carry it with me every day. The vigilance, the fear, the relief, and the knowledge that life is fragile, but that I am stronger than I ever believed possible. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to download a dating app. For most of my life, I had drifted along while everyone around me seemed to be having wild relationships, messy breakups, or passionate flings. I spent my weekends either glued to my computer, gaming late into the night, or meeting the same two friends at a sports bar. Relationships had always eluded me. Sure, I had a couple of short-lived flings in college, but nothing serious ever stuck. By my late 20s, it felt like love had passed me by entirely. I didn't think I was particularly attractive. My hair was thinning, I had scars from stubborn acne on my cheeks, and I was built neither fat nor athletic, just average. My co-workers often joked I looked more like a tech support guy than a dating material type. Still, sitting alone one summer evening in my cramped Akron apartment, I finally caved. "What's the worst that could happen?" I muttered, tapping download on the Tinder app. The first few weeks were exactly what I expected. Awkward messages, unmatched mid-conversation, or complete silence from the women I actually found attractive. The app seemed to make my insecurities worse with every swipe. But then, she appeared. Her name was Lena. I still remember the notification. "Lena has sent you a message." I stared at my phone, almost convinced it was a bot. Her profile seemed legitimate. Casual photos of her at a lake, holding a dog, even one with her brother. Still, it felt surreal that someone like her was messaging me. Her first message was simple. "Hey, I like your smile." I laughed. Nobody had ever said that to me before. I ignored it at first, thinking it was some scam or automated message. But she followed up a few days later with something playful. "So, are you going to leave me hanging? Or do you not like blondes?" Against my better judgment, I replied, and what began as casual banter turned into daily conversations. Within a week, we were texting non-stop. 2 weeks later, we were on nightly video calls. Lena had a way of making me feel seen, wanted, even special. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. A month into our chats, Lena suggested I visit her. She lived outside Mansfield, in a small town about an hour from me. My gut screamed hesitation. Meeting someone from a dating app in person, alone, in a rural area? It sounded like a cliché horror movie waiting to happen, but her reassurances wore me down. We'll meet at a cafe first if you want, but I think it's time we hang out in person. I took 2 days off work, told my brother where I was going, and packed a small bag. The drive was long but uneventful at first. It was the texting that started to creep me out. Every half hour, Lena would ask where I was, how much longer, why I wasn't responding faster. At one point, I pulled over to a dead-zone stretch of road just to answer her rapid messages. "Hey, relax, I'm on the road," I typed. "Don't want to crash." Her reply was almost instant. "Sorry, just excited. Can't wait to see you." I brushed it off as nerves, trying not to overthink it. But as I followed her directions, the roads changed. Long, winding gravel paths lined with dense trees replaced the main highway. Streetlights disappeared. GPS signals vanished. Every turn seemed to lead deeper into an endless forest. When I finally saw the house, my stomach sank. It wasn't the cozy, cheerful home I expected. The paint was peeling like sunburned skin. One window upstairs was boarded shut, and the yard was overgrown. A small red Volkswagen, the same one Lena mentioned in texts, sat by the garage. I tried to dismiss my unease, telling myself I was imagining things. I texted her, "I'm here." Her reply, a single smiley face. Steeling myself, I walked up to the front door. As I raised my hand to knock, movement caught my eye. In the second-floor window, an old man stared at me, pale, gaunt, skeletal, his hollow eyes fixed on me without blinking. My blood ran cold. I forced myself to remember that Lena had mentioned her dad before. Maybe it was him. Maybe he was just home early. I knocked. The door creaked open. Lena stood there, smiling, radiant, more beautiful than any photo could show. She pulled me inside, hugging me tightly. Relief washed over me, but I couldn't shake the dread crawling up my spine. Didn't know your dad was here today," I said casually, trying not to sound nervous. Lena's face went pale. "My dad? No, he's in Florida. Won't be back for weeks." My stomach dropped. The old man at the window. He couldn't be real. And yet I had seen him. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I'm just tired. But Lena grabbed my arm, trembling. "We need to leave, now." I followed her outside. My mind raced, trying to piece together what had just happened. She insisted we call the police. Half an hour later, officers arrived and searched the house. Nothing. No old man. No forced entry. Just the back door, slightly ajar. That night, Lena begged me to stay. We locked all doors and grabbed her dad's shotgun from a cabinet. I sat awake, the weight of the weapon heavy across my lap, listening to the quiet hum of the TV. Around 3 a.m., a sound made my heart stop, the slow, deliberate rattle of a doorknob upstairs. I crept up with the shotgun. In the dim glow of the kitchen, he stood there, the same pale, hollow-eyed man. He froze when he saw me, then bolted into the woods. I ran downstairs, shaking Lena awake, explaining what I saw. We called the police again. Another search. Another nothing. By sunrise, Lena left to stay at a friend's house. I sat in my car for a while, calling my brother, trying to calm down. That's when I saw him again, standing silently in the yard, framed by the glow of the porch light. I floored it. We went on a few more dates, but I could never shake that night. Lena never returned to that house alone, and eventually our conversations stopped. Even now, thinking about dating apps makes my stomach twist. The memory of that window, that face, keeps me away. Even after that night, my curiosity and disbelief clashed constantly. I wanted to rationalize what I'd seen, tell myself it was a trick of shadows or fatigue. But deep down, I knew the hollow-eyed man was real. and he had been inside that house. Lena and I tried to move past it, going on a few cautious dates. But every time the conversation drifted to her home, she became pale and distant. Eventually, we stopped talking altogether. Months later, I found myself scrolling through the dating app again, almost as if trying to reclaim the part of my life I had left behind. But the memory of the window, the old man's hollow stare, stopped me cold. I deleted the app and never opened it again. A year passed. Life went on in small increments. Work, friends, occasional weekends out. But I couldn't shake that night. It haunted my dreams. The long gravel roads, the peeling paint, the man in the window, and his silent, unstoppable presence. I couldn't explain why he hadn't hurt us. I couldn't explain why the police never found him. And I certainly couldn't explain why I could still see him sometimes, standing in shadowed corners, watching. One evening, curiosity got the better of me. I drove past Mansfield pretending to need supplies in the area, just to see the house from a distance. The forested roads twisted the same as before, but when I reached the clearing, the house wasn't as I remembered. It was darker somehow, more abandoned, the peeling paint sharper in the twilight. And then I saw it, him, standing at the edge of the woods, unmoving, watching. I slammed the accelerator, heart pounding, and didn't look back. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I kept seeing flashes of the house, Lena's frightened face, the hollow-eyed man in the kitchen. I realized I had stumbled into something beyond logic, beyond explanation. Whatever had been in that house wasn't just a person. It was a presence, a shadow that existed just beyond reason. I stopped dating entirely. I stopped looking for companionship. Every time I thought about Tinder or meeting someone new, my mind conjured that face at the window. The hollow eyes, skeletal frame, and silent menace reminded me that sometimes danger isn't obvious until it's right in front of you. I never found out who the man really was, or what he wanted. Lena eventually moved away, and we lost contact. But I can still remember the feeling of his gaze, the weight of his presence in the quiet house, and the way the world outside suddenly seemed too bright, too safe. Some part of me knows he's still out there, still waiting in shadowed places, just beyond where reason ends. And I know one thing for certain. I'll never go near a dating app again. Not ever. The experience left me haunted, but it also taught me something I hadn't realized I needed to learn. There are things in this world that defy understanding. Creatures, people, presences that are patient, silent, and terrifying. And sometimes curiosity can lead you straight into them. I live cautiously now, eyes always scanning, senses sharp, heart always a step ahead of what I know I can't explain. And every time I hear of someone meeting the perfect match online, I picture that house, that window, that pale, silent figure, and I shiver. I never imagined I would be the kind of person to join a dating app. For most of my 20s, I told myself I preferred real connections, meeting someone over coffee, in a bookstore, through mutual friends. Online dating felt superficial, even desperate. But after my last relationship ended, leaving me with empty apartments, shared bills, and dashed plans for the future, I found myself staring at the ceiling night after night, swallowed by silence. The hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak of the floorboards, even the city outside my window, it all felt amplified, deafening. My best friend, Tara, finally called me one evening, her tone firm. "Rachel, you can't live like this. You need to get out there. Not for him, just for you. Talk to people, flirt. Remind yourself life is still happening." I didn't argue. I listened. That night, I downloaded Tinder. The first week was brutal. The app felt like scrolling through a gallery of mannequins. Guys holding up fish, awkward mirror selfies, shallow bios, and worse, boring messages. I almost deleted it. Then, late one night, sprawled across my couch, I paused on a profile that made me stop. Daniel. His photo wasn't flashy. A close-up of his face. strong jawline, short brown hair, and eyes that seemed too intense, piercingly blue. His bio read, "Truth is not always what you see with your eyes." Pretentious, maybe, but intriguing. I swiped right. Within minutes, he messaged me. "Rachel, couldn't help noticing your smile. The kind people write poems about." I laughed. This wasn't the usual boring, pushy opener. The conversation flowed naturally. He asked about my favorite books, music, and the things that made me laugh. Most guys only asked where I lived, or if I was free to meet. Daniel was different. Over the next week, we texted constantly. I learned he worked in design, loved dark literature, and grew up in the same city. He quoted Poe one night, and I confessed my guilty pleasure for mystery novels. We connected in a way I hadn't felt in years. Eventually, he asked me out for coffee. I agreed. The Friday evening meeting was nerve-wracking but exhilarating. He was taller than I expected, broad-shouldered, neatly dressed, and those eyes, still piercing. Conversation flowed effortlessly. 2 hours passed unnoticed. When he suggested dinner at his place next week, I hesitated, but the attention and excitement of connection won. Thursday arrived. His apartment building was older brick, wedged between modern glass structures. I buzzed him in, climbed the stairs, and entered his dimly lit apartment. The smell was faintly smoky, with a hint of spices. Candles flickered on the table, set for two. "Family recipes," he said with a boyish grin as he led me to my seat. The dinner started innocuously. Lamb, tender and flavorful, was laid out in front of me. Conversation revolved around art, literature, and the city. He recited poetry with an intensity that should have felt romantic. Instead, unease crept in. There was something in his gaze, a hunger that had nothing to do with desire. After dinner, he gestured toward the balcony. "You'll love the view," he said. The city lights stretched below like scattered stars, but the air was thick with a metallic, meaty smell. I wrinkled my nose. "Something smells off." He laughed, a hollow sound. "Just a little lamb burger, family recipe." When he lifted the grill lid, I froze. A long blonde hair was tangled around the patty. My stomach lurched. That doesn't look right," I muttered. His smile vanished. Eyes hard, voice low. "I promise you'll love it. Just try." My heart pounded. I don't feel well. I should go." "No, you don't," he growled, grabbing my wrist with iron strength. "We're meant to be together forever. You're not leaving." The smell grew stronger. Gagging, I stumbled back, my foot hitting a metal bucket in the corner. It tipped, clanging loudly. Inside were bones, a skull, bleached white. My scream ripped through the apartment. Daniel lunged. "Don't ruin this, Rachel!" Adrenaline surged. My hand darted for the spatula on the grill. Without thinking, I swung. The metal connected with a sickening thud. He collapsed, blood trickling from a wound on his head. Shaking, I dropped the spatula and bolted, down the stairs, through the lobby, and into the night. I fumbled for my phone, dialing frantically. The police arrived quickly, storming the apartment. Daniel was alive but unconscious. Inside, they found a locked room filled with the remains of young women, all lured through dating apps, all promised romance. I was the only one who survived. I had escaped before becoming another trophy in his gruesome collection. Even after the ordeal, survival didn't feel like victory. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his piercing blue eyes, heard his hollow laugh, and smelled that metallic stench. And in the quietest moments, I could still hear him whisper the same chilling words. "We're meant to be together forever." Even after I escaped Daniel's apartment, the world didn't feel safe anymore. I couldn't shake the memory of those piercing blue eyes, the way his gaze had studied me as if I were nothing more than prey. Every shadow, every sudden noise in my apartment made my heart race. I checked every lock, every window, obsessively. Friends told me I was being paranoid, but I knew there was nothing paranoid about what I had seen. I avoided dating entirely. I deleted every account, every app, every message. Even the thought of meeting someone new made my stomach twist. Yet, curiosity, or maybe the need to understand, sometimes tempted me. I wondered how many other women had fallen for him before me, how many others hadn't been so lucky. Weeks passed, then months. Life tried to resume its normal rhythm, but I couldn't let go of the fear. Every time my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, my pulse doubled. Shadows in the corner of my apartment seemed to stretch longer, to linger. The city lights outside my window, once comforting, now felt oppressive, as if they were highlighting my vulnerability. One evening, I forced myself to revisit the street where his building stood. I told myself it was just closure, a way to see that he was gone, captured, neutralized. But as I approached the brick apartment tucked between newer glass structures, a cold dread slithered over me. The building was quiet, dark, and seemingly empty. Yet my instincts screamed that danger could still lurk anywhere. The police had confirmed he was in custody, but the images of the locked room, the remains, haunted me. I couldn't stop replaying the dinner, the hair in the meat, the hollow laughter. I remembered the way he had whispered, "We're meant to be together forever," and how utterly terrifying it had felt at that moment. Those words were more than obsession. They were a declaration, a promise of something monstrous, something that lingered beyond physical imprisonment. Sleep became a battle. I would wake gasping, heart hammering, drenched in sweat. Images of Daniel's twisted face burned into my mind. Sometimes I imagined him outside my window, watching. I told myself it was the mind playing tricks, but the fear felt real, visceral. Months later, I moved to a new apartment, hoping distance could dull the memory. It helped, slightly, but the trauma never faded completely. I avoided social media, online interactions, anything that could lead to another encounter with someone like him. My friendships helped, and I clung to Tara, the one friend who had pushed me to try again, unaware of how close I had come to death. Then, one night, I had a dream so vivid it felt like it had actually happened. I was back in his apartment, the candles flickering, the smell of spices mixed with something metallic in the air. Daniel was there, smiling, his piercing eyes fixed on me. He leaned closer, whispering the same chilling words. "We're meant to be together forever." I woke screaming, the echoes of his voice lingering in my ears. I realized something terrifying. Even though he was locked away, part of him had followed me. Trauma isn't something you can imprison. It can't be locked behind doors. It lives in the shadows of your mind, in every unexpected noise, in every fleeting glance at someone who seems too perfect. It was a reminder that survival didn't erase fear. It only made it sharper. Years passed. Daniel's name made headlines occasionally. Trial dates, guilty verdicts, sentencing, but the media attention didn't bring peace. They reported the facts, the crimes, the remains. They didn't report the feeling of being hunted, the icy dread of realizing how close I had come to being another one of his victims. Sometimes, when I'm walking home alone at night, I feel a chill that isn't caused by the wind. I feel the echo of his presence, like a shadow stretching just beyond the streetlights. My mind immediately conjures the memory of the balcony that should have been romantic but had been a trap. The smell, the eyes, the words, they are with me still, uninvited guests, in the quiet moments of my life. I've started therapy, slowly unpacking the trauma. It helps, a little, but I will never forget. I know I will always flinch at certain words, certain gestures. I will never trust dating apps again. And even when I feel safe, a part of me always listens for that whisper, that hollow laugh, that reminder of Daniel's obsession. We're meant to be together forever. Survival isn't triumph. Survival is waking up every day knowing what could have been, what almost happened. Survival is living with the memory of a predator's gaze burned into your mind. And for me, survival is a reminder that darkness can hide behind the most charming of masks. waiting for a simple swipe, a single moment of trust. I can tell myself I am safe. I can tell myself it's over. But every time I hear of another dating app story, another perfect match online, I see his face again, hear his voice again, and I know deep down that some part of me will always be looking over my shoulder, waiting, wondering if the next Daniel is just a click away. I never thought I'd be the type to use dating apps. I'd always considered myself someone who met people in coffee shops, bookstores, or at a friend's party, not someone who swiped through endless faces in my bedroom at midnight. But after my breakup, loneliness became a shadow I couldn't shake. Nights blurred together. I'd finish work as a freelance graphic designer, eat something frozen or order takeout, and then scroll through Instagram feeds of friends who were moving on with their lives. Babies, promotions, vacations. I told myself I didn't mind, that solitude was freedom. But there was a hollow ache that refused to go away. One Friday night, after a couple glasses of wine and a movie I barely watched, I gave in. I downloaded Tinder. At first I swiped aimlessly, judging faces, bios, and selfies, feeling more disillusioned with each scroll. Most profiles were either painfully generic or overly curated, the kind where every angle screamed, "I'm perfect, buy me." I was about to give up entirely when one profile stopped me cold. Her name was Emily. It wasn't her smile or her pose that hooked me. It was how real she looked. 3 photos, simple, natural, laughing on a city street, leaning against a cafe wall, and a close-up with eyes that seemed to flicker with curiosity. Her bio was short: collector of moments, fan of loud guitars and quiet nights. Don't waste my time. Something about it felt genuine, unpolished. I swiped right almost instinctively. Within seconds, the match notification popped up. My heart skipped a beat. I'd expected a delayed hey or nothing at all, but her first message was immediate. "Emily. Haha. Finally. Someone worth talking to." I laughed out loud. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of excitement. Our conversation flowed effortlessly. We joked about favorite movies, music we loved, and the ridiculousness of dating apps. She seemed intelligent, confident, and oddly unbothered by the fact that I'd just lost months to loneliness. By midnight, she suggested meeting the next night. "Just come by my place," she wrote. "No fuss, no bars, no crowds. We can just hang, watch a movie." Normally, I would have hesitated. Meeting someone's apartment was a red flag, but something in her tone was so casual, so confident, that I said yes. The next evening, I drove through the rain-soaked streets of Cincinnati, nerves coiling in my stomach. The neighborhood was quiet, almost too quiet. Streetlights buzzed dimly, and some houses were boarded up or neglected. I parked near the address she'd sent, took a deep breath, and stepped out. My hand shook slightly as I pushed open the front door. It wasn't locked. I froze. Most people didn't leave doors open at night in this area, especially not for someone they'd met online. I told myself she must have done it intentionally, that she was expecting me. The hallway was dimly lit by a single bulb, the floor sticky with old grime. As I walked in, I heard it, a whisper, faint and urgent. "Shh, he's right outside." My stomach dropped. I spun around, heart hammering. Shadows flickered behind the blinds of a ground floor window. Multiple shapes, watching me. I swallowed hard, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. Maybe it was roommates playing a prank, I told myself. Maybe Emily had friends teasing me. But the whisper was sharp, not playful. My gut screamed danger. I took a cautious step forward. Movement. Just ahead, a flicker behind the blinds. My breath hitched. Whoever, or whatever, was there. They weren't ordinary. I backed up slowly, hand brushing against the wall, listening. The sound repeated, a hiss this time. "Shh, don't go in." I didn't need another warning. I bolted, my sneakers squeaking on the worn linoleum. My mind raced, imagining all the headlines. Local man abducted in sketchy apartment building. My fingers fumbled at my keys, heart in my throat, as I shoved the door open into the cold night. I slammed it behind me and ran to my car, chest heaving. As soon as I was inside, I locked the doors, hands trembling. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Emily, where'd you go? I've been waiting. I froze. The room I had fled from, the shadows, the whispering voices. I knew now there was no Emily, not here, not ever. I blocked the number, deleted our conversation, and drove back to my friend Tyler's apartment, heart still racing. He laughed when I tried to explain what happened. Dude, maybe you're overthinking it, he said. But I knew better. That was no innocent prank. Whoever had used Emily's photos had lured me, carefully, deliberately, to a trap. Weeks later, curiosity gnawed at me. I reverse-searched Emily's photos online. They weren't hers, stolen from a random girl's Instagram account. Someone was using them to bait people like me. And I realized with a chill creeping down my spine that what I had narrowly escaped was not just an awkward date. It could have been far worse. For weeks after that night, I tried to push it from my mind, but sleep didn't come easy. Every creak in the apartment, every flicker of a shadow outside my window made me flinch. I kept imagining what might have happened if I hadn't trusted my instincts. What if I'd walked down that dim hallway, stepped closer to the whispering voices? I shivered at the thought. Then, one evening, I was home alone, scrolling through old messages on my phone out of some restless curiosity. I knew I shouldn't, knew it would reopen a wound, but I couldn't resist. I hesitated over her last text. Where'd you go? I've been waiting. My thumb hovered, almost on autopilot, over the option to delete the conversation entirely. And then, my phone buzzed. I froze. It wasn't a call, not a normal notification. It was a photo. My chest tightened. My hands shook as I unlocked the screen. The image made my blood run cold. It was me, sitting on my couch, phone in hand, staring at my old Tinder conversation with horror carved into my face. The angle was from behind, from the corner of the room. I wasn't alone in the photo, yet when I looked around my apartment, it was empty. Every shadow seemed normal, but the dread crawling up my spine said otherwise. Then another buzz, another photo, another angle, another moment of me, frozen in fear, unaware that I was being watched. My hands flew to the light switch, flicked it on. Nothing, no one, but the unease lingered, thick and suffocating. I felt a cold draft, though all the windows were closed. My eyes darted around the room, landing on my coffee table, and there it was. A leather bracelet, the same thin, worn leather bracelet that Emily, or whatever that was, wore in her photos. My stomach lurched. I didn't touch it. I couldn't. I backed into the corner of the living room, my mind racing for explanations, none of them rational. This was impossible. She was never real. She didn't exist. And yet, the bracelet lying there told me a terrifying truth. I had never escaped her or him. Whoever had lured me that night had found a way into my life, into my apartment. Panic clawed at me. I called Tyler. "Tyler, you need to help me," I said, voice shaking. Someone's in my apartment. I think they've been here. I just got photos of me, watching me." "Whoa, slow down," he said, confused. "Photos? What do you mean?" "I don't know, man. Emily, it's not real. Someone's using her photos. They're here, in my apartment. I think I'm being stalked." There was silence on the line. Then Tyler's voice, cautious but skeptical. "Dude, maybe you're imagining things. You've been through a lot. Just calm down." I hung up. I couldn't calm down. Not after what I had seen. Not after realizing that the danger I'd narrowly escaped weeks ago wasn't over. I needed answers. I needed proof. I decided to leave the apartment. Grab a hotel room for a night anywhere safe. I packed a bag quickly, checking corners obsessively, as if the act of looking could make whatever had been there disappear. As I drove through the rain-slicked streets of Cincinnati, headlights reflecting in puddles, my mind replayed every detail from that night. The flickering shadows, the hiss of the whispered warning, the unlocked door. Every instinct I'd ignored, every step I had taken, now screamed at me with terrifying clarity. I checked my phone again. Another message. From the same number. Message. Thank you. I almost threw the phone out the window. I had blocked this number. How was it sending messages? The app on my phone didn't exist anymore. The text wasn't just a threat. It was a message of ownership, of control. And then I noticed something horrifying. The timestamps. They weren't recent. They were from the night I had first gone to that building. Somehow they had been stored, delayed, arriving now, haunting me. I pulled into a motel on the outskirts of the city, room number 12. I double-checked the locks, set up a small fan for white noise, and sat on the bed, staring at the leather bracelet. I couldn't throw it away. Not yet. It was evidence, proof. But every time I looked at it, I felt the presence of those piercing green eyes on me again, watching, waiting. Sleep was impossible. I kept the lights on, pacing the small room in exhaustion and fear. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had become meaningless. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't photos. It was a video. I opened it, trembling. My living room, my couch, me, asleep. My apartment empty. Yet I could see a shadow moving across the floor, slow, deliberate. The video ended before I could see more. But I knew what it meant. The person, or thing, had never left. They had access, control, always. And I realized something else. I had been lucky, not careful, not smart, lucky. And luck runs out. I couldn't stay in that room, couldn't stay in my apartment. I considered leaving the city entirely, but I knew that wasn't enough. Whoever had orchestrated this wasn't tied to one location. They were patient, methodical, and always observing. I felt like prey in a predator's game, and every instinct screamed that I'd narrowly escaped death or worse months ago. Then I made a mistake. I pulled the phone closer to study the video. Movement in the corner of my eye. The door to the room I had locked. A flicker. A shadow. I froze, my pulse hammering, sweat beading on my forehead. Slowly I turned toward the door. Empty. Silent. Nothing. And yet I couldn't shake the feeling. The presence. Waiting. Watching. I realized then that the Tinder profile, the photos, the casual messages, they were all bait. The real danger had never been Emily. It had been him, or her, or whoever had been orchestrating this game. Someone who thrived on fear, on control, on watching lives unravel. And I had stumbled into it, drawn in by loneliness and curiosity. The leather bracelet lay on the nightstand, innocent and sinister at the same time. My hands hovered over it. I knew the truth. I had survived, but only barely, only by accident. And the worst part? I wasn't free. Not really. Because somewhere out there, my predator was smiling, planning, and waiting for the next move. I didn't sleep that night, and I haven't since. Even now, when my phone buzzes, I check. I can't help it. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see a photo appear, a shadow, a corner, a hint of green eyes that pierce through the darkness. I survived, but survival has its price, and mine is living with the knowledge that Emily was never real, and my stalker always is. I never thought I'd be the type to swipe endlessly on dating apps. For years I had been in a steady relationship, the kind where life felt predictable and comfortable. But after she left me suddenly, quietly, without drama, I felt untethered, like a ship lost in a storm with no direction. My apartment in Dayton, Ohio, suddenly felt hollow. Nights were the worst. The glow of my laptop, the hum of the refrigerator, and nothing else. No laughter, no conversation, just silence that pressed against my eardrums. It was my friend Max who pushed me. He was insistent, leaning back on the threadbare couch in his tiny studio apartment with a beer in hand. You need to get back out there, man. Tinder, Bumble, Whatever. You can't just sit around crying over your ex forever. I laughed it off. I'm not doing the swipe thing. It feels shallow. He smirked. Shallow? Dude, it's fun. And at least you're talking to someone, even if it's just for a night. I shook my head, but later that night, alone and restless, I gave in. The app felt strange at first. Profiles blurred together, forced smiles, selfies with filters, gym mirrors, meaningless quotes. Most of the messages fizzled instantly, just hey or you up. But then I saw her, Lila. Her profile wasn't flashy. No bathroom selfies or dramatic captions, just a few photos. One of her leaning on a railing by a river, another laughing mid-conversation at a cafe, and one close-up with intense, almost mischievous green eyes. Her bio was simple. Explorer, collector of moments. Don't waste my time. I swiped right before I even thought. Almost immediately, a message appeared. Lila. Finally, someone who didn't swipe left because my dog isn't in every photo. Her humor hit me immediately. The conversation flowed naturally, hours passing in bursts of laughter, shared stories, and playful teasing. She suggested we meet in person, a walk in Willow Creek Park, a quiet spot a few miles from my apartment. My gut told me to hesitate. Stranger, darkening evening, isolated trails. But I felt a spark of excitement I hadn't felt in months. Thursday evening, I drove to the park, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The sun was low, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. I parked near the main entrance, nerves buzzing. My phone vibrated. Lila, by the pavilion. I'll be waving. I looked up, and there she was. The same Lila from the photos, denim jacket over a light blouse, sneakers dusted with dirt, and that unmistakable smile. Relief washed over me. She was real. I stepped out and waved back. "Hey!" I called, trying to sound casual. "Hey!" she answered warmly. She had this easy presence, like sunlight folding into itself, making everything feel lighter. We started walking along the paved path toward the wooded trails, laughing at the absurdity of online dating, and sharing stories about failed jobs, terrible roommates, and ridiculous high school memories. The trail was quiet, lined with oaks and maples. Fireflies flickered near the brush, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth. We even held hands for a moment, simple, unplanned, but natural. My chest felt light, my mind quiet for the first time in months. Then I noticed it, a shadowy figure, standing further down the trail. My stomach clenched. "Do you see him?" Lila whispered, stopping. I nodded, forcing my voice to remain calm. "Yeah, maybe someone out for a jog." The figure didn't move, didn't blink, just stood, arms by his side. But then the moonlight caught something. He held a long, glinting knife. My pulse spiked. "Hands up! Turn around!" His voice was rough, low, demanding. I froze. My brain screamed to run, but my legs refused. Lila's eyes widened. She was as stunned as I was, but then, almost instinctively, she acted. She lunged at him, slamming into his chest with all her weight. He staggered backward, dropping the knife. "Run!" she yelled. My body jolted into motion, legs pumping as we bolted down the trail. Branches whipped at our arms and faces, but I barely noticed. Behind us, the crunch of footsteps chased us, heavy and deliberate. We reached the gravel parking lot, lungs burning, hearts hammering. Lila yanked open her car door and we dove inside. She locked the doors, fumbling with the keys before starting the engine. I risked a glance in the rearview mirror. The man was gone, just standing at the edge of the lot, motionless, watching us leave. Even in the safety of my car, the adrenaline hadn't faded. I wanted to ask questions, but the words caught in my throat. Who was he? Why us? And why hadn't he followed? We drove silently to a late-night diner in town. The neon lights reflected off our faces as we ordered greasy pancakes and coffee. Neither of us spoke much at first. still digesting the terror of the encounter. Slowly, we began recounting the events, each retelling bringing new chills. Lila's quick thinking, her fearless lunge, it had saved my life. We didn't talk much after that night, but a strange bond had formed. Shared fear has a way of creating intimacy. I couldn't shake the image of him, the figure in the moonlight, knife in hand, watching. I realized then that my life had almost ended in an ordinary park, under the guise of a casual first date. I had been lucky. The days after that night were a blur. Sleep came in short, fitful bursts, haunted by shadows of the figure standing silently at the edge of the parking lot. I kept replaying everything in my head. The way Lila had lunged, the glint of the knife, the unnatural stillness of him. It didn't make sense. Who was he? And why had he been there? I tried to convince myself it was a fluke, some disturbed person taking a late-night walk with bad intentions. But rationalizing it did little to quiet the unease that had settled over me. Every noise outside my apartment, footsteps in the hallway, a car engine starting in the lot, made my pulse jump. I stopped walking alone at night, stopped leaving the apartment without checking every corner of my surroundings. Lila reached out the next evening. Lila, hey, you okay? I've been thinking about that night nonstop. Want to talk? I stared at my phone for a long minute before replying. Something about her message sent a shiver down my spine. It was casual, almost too casual, like she was brushing off the gravity of what happened. But I needed someone to talk to, and I trusted her more than anyone. We met at a small coffee shop in the morning. She was already there when I arrived, sipping a latte and scrolling on her phone. "Morning," she said, looking up with a faint smile. "Morning," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. We sat in silence for a few moments, the low hum of the cafe filling the space between us. Finally, I spoke. "That guy, we should report it. Maybe the police can find him, right?" Lila shook her head slowly. "I already thought about it, but there's nothing to report. No ID, no real evidence. He didn't touch us, didn't threaten with words, just stood there. If we go to the cops, they'll probably think we're exaggerating." Her calmness was unnerving. It was as if she had expected this, as if the figure was not just a random encounter, but something she had prepared for. I frowned. Prepared for what? She hesitated, glancing down at her coffee. "I can't explain it yet. Just be careful. There are people who watch, and sometimes they don't want to be seen until it's too late." Her words chilled me more than the memory of the knife ever could. I didn't want to ask more, and she didn't volunteer further. Something about her tone, quiet, urgent, made it clear that pressing her wouldn't yield answers, only danger. Over the next few weeks, life returned to a semblance of normal. I started seeing Lila more, cautiously. We walked, went to small bars, watched movies at my apartment. But I never let my guard down completely. Every rustle in the bushes, every passing car, sent a jolt through me. Then it happened. It was a Thursday evening, and we had decided to go for a drive along the river, somewhere quiet to talk and unwind. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruise of purple and gray. Lila was driving, her hand steady on the wheel, eyes focused on the road ahead. I stared out the window, trying to shake off the familiar tension curling in my chest. "That guy," I said finally, breaking the silence. "I can't stop thinking about him. Do you know who he was?" Lila's jaw tightened. "Number and I don't want to know. Some things are better left unsaid until you're ready to deal with them." I wanted to press, but I sensed her boundaries. I didn't push. Instead, I focused on the winding road and the occasional flicker of streetlights reflecting off the river. That night, when we got home, I noticed something odd. My apartment door, which I was certain I had locked, was slightly ajar. My heart thudded against my ribs. "I swear I locked it," I muttered, more to myself than to Lila. She put a hand on my arm. "Check inside, but be careful." I did. Nothing seemed disturbed. No signs of forced entry. But on my coffee table lay a small, folded piece of paper. I picked it up, and unfolded it slowly. Written in neat, precise letters were 3 words: "We're closer." I dropped it. Lila's eyes widened as she read it over my shoulder. "We need to leave," she said firmly. "Now." We packed essentials, phones, wallets, anything we could carry quickly, and left my apartment. The streets were dark, empty, and quiet, but every shadow seemed alive. I kept glancing behind us, expecting to see him or them. We drove to a motel on the outskirts of the city. Nothing fancy, just somewhere safe, with locked doors and cameras outside. Lila kept the lights on and didn't leave the room once. She didn't speak much, only paced, occasionally checking the blinds or the hallway for movement. At around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. I froze. The message read, "Unknown. Good evening, Abe. We missed you." My stomach dropped. Lila grabbed the phone before I could react. Her hands were steady, but her face was pale. "They know we're here." Panic surged. I realized then that this was bigger than a random encounter. The man in the park, the whispers in the apartment, the shadows watching. They were connected. I didn't know how, but I knew we had to get out of the city. Lila agreed. By dawn, we were on the road, heading north, away from Dayton. Neither of us spoke much. The silence was thick, punctuated only by the occasional hum of the tires on asphalt. But despite the fear, there was a strange clarity. We had survived the first encounter. We had survived the warning. Somehow I knew that as long as we stayed alert and trusted each other, we could survive what came next. But deep down, I understood something terrible. This was far from over. Whoever or whatever was watching had chosen us for a reason, and they weren't finished. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting light on the empty highways, I stared out at the passing trees and whispered to myself, "We're not safe, not yet." And somewhere in the shadows, I knew someone or something was already waiting for the next move. I never really liked dating apps. Something about them always felt shallow, like trying to pick out a life partner from a glossy catalog. My parents had met in college. My sister had met her husband at a wedding, and I always assumed love happened naturally, bumping into someone at the right time, in the right place. But by the time I was 28, I hadn't had a serious relationship since high school. Loneliness had a way of creeping into your bones when you least notice it, and after a long day at the logistics warehouse on the outskirts of Albany, New York, I felt it pressing down on me, heavy and insistent. It wasn't my idea to try online dating. Tyler, my coworker, practically shoved his phone in my face one night during break. "Dude, just look at this. Half of these girls live right here in Albany." I rolled my eyes. But the truth was, I hadn't really met anyone new in months. My life had become a routine. Wake up, commute, work 12 hours, come home, eat, sleep, repeat. Maybe a dating app wouldn't be so terrible. Against my better judgment, I downloaded Tinder. The first few profiles made me groan. Perfectly posed selfies, filtered faces, women holding cats like it was some kind of trophy. I almost deleted the app, convinced it was a mistake, when one profile caught my eye. Claire. Her photos were understated, unassuming. One by a pond, another in a backyard, one under autumn trees, and a close-up where her dark hair framed her face softly. There were no friends, no pets, no fancy trips, just her. She seemed normal, real. We matched that Wednesday. She messaged first. "Hey, you seem chill. What are you up to tonight?" That should have been a warning sign, right? But I typed back, telling her I was just going to hang at home. Her reply was instant. "Want to hang out?" I hesitated. Meeting a stranger at my place. It was reckless, but I rationalized it. My basement setup was private, with its own entrance and bathroom, almost like a tiny apartment. If things went wrong, I had an easy excuse. Work early tomorrow. I told her yes. At 8 sharp, I opened the basement door. She was there, quiet, small, wearing a dark jacket that hung slightly loose on her frame. "Hi," she said softly. Her voice was calm, no nervous energy, no awkward fumbling. I offered a smile, tried to make small talk, but she wasn't interested in idle chatter. She followed me downstairs into the basement, boots clicking lightly on the concrete steps. We sat on the bed. My room wasn't much, just a twin mattress, a desk, and a TV mounted on the wall, but it was private. I tried breaking the silence. "How was the drive?" I asked. She laughed. A short, sharp sound that made my skin prickle. That was it. No answer. Just laughter. Her eyes stayed fixed on me, wide and unblinking. I forced a smile. "You're not from around here, are you?" I asked. She shook her head. No elaboration. Her gaze never left me. I tried the TV for background noise, but her eyes stayed on me. Every time I tried to fill the silence with questions, she answered briefly, or just laughed again. It was unnerving. I had a pit in my stomach, a warning that something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. After maybe 30 minutes, I decided to cut the date short. I actually got a text from work. They want me in early tomorrow. I should probably sleep." She looked disappointed, but said nothing. I stood, walking her to the basement door, heart racing. She lingered, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. "Good night," I said firmly, opening the door wider. She stepped outside. I thought that was the end of it. I locked the door, convinced I had handled it. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Are you sure you have to go to bed?" I was having fun. My stomach dropped. I rolled my eyes, tried to dismiss it. But then I went upstairs for a snack and froze. My phone was missing. I was certain I'd left it by my bed. Panic rose as I scanned the room. The red LED strip by the wall cast eerie shadows. I called my parents' landline. My number rang, coming from the boiler room connected to the basement. I inched into the room, heart hammering. My phone lay on top of the washing machine, vibrating with new texts from an unknown sender. 2 pictures of me sleeping, accompanied by one chilling message. "Nice. Good job blocking me. Lock your door next time." I froze. Every nerve screamed at me. I didn't dare look behind the boiler. Didn't dare check the dark corners. Something was in the house. I bolted upstairs shaking, waking my parents. The police arrived quickly, thanks to the texts and photos. They tracked her down within hours. Her real name wasn't Claire. It was Solana. The experience left me rattled. I realized that monsters don't always look frightening. Sometimes they look calm, quiet, almost harmless, until it's too late. Even after Solana was gone, the memory of lying there, unaware, while someone watched me in the dark, lingered. That silence before the shutter clicked, more terrifying than any words or actions, haunted me. Even after Solana was caught and charged, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that had taken root. It wasn't just fear. It was the sense that someone had been inside my life, inside my personal space, and I hadn't even known it. I tried to return to a normal routine, but every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the corners of my basement, made my heart race. The police assured me she wouldn't be back, but the idea of her lurking, watching, was embedded in my mind. Days turned into weeks. I stopped going out alone at night. I stopped answering messages from strangers, and my trust in people was fractured, small shards of doubt cutting into every interaction. Even friends noticed the change. Tyler nudged me one afternoon at work. "You're more jumpy than ever," he said, half joking, half concerned. I just forced a laugh. "Yeah, just tired," I lied. But the real terror didn't fade. It lingered in subtle ways. The phone vibrating unexpectedly, shadows that seemed to stretch longer than they should, the rustle of the wind against the windows sounding like whispered footsteps. Every time I came home late, my basement felt like it had shrunk, tighter, darker, as if someone was watching from the corners I couldn't see. I installed extra locks, cameras, alarms, but even those felt like thin barriers against something that had already been inside me, already known the layout of my life. One night, about a month after the incident, I was up late finishing paperwork. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My cat, normally curled beside me, jumped from the chair at a sudden noise, a soft click from the basement door. My blood ran cold. I froze, eyes darting toward the darkened stairwell. The door had been locked. It had to have been. Yet there it was, cracked, just a fraction. I took a deep breath, convincing myself it was nothing, probably just the house settling. But instinct told me otherwise. Slowly, carefully, I crept to the top of the stairs, heart hammering so loudly it felt like it would betray me to the world. Nothing. The basement was dark. The faint red glow of my LED strip from before barely lit the edges. I switched on the overhead light. Still nothing. Every shadow seemed wrong. Every corner too deep. I told myself I was overreacting, that Solana was locked up, and the court had issued a restraining order. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I backed away slowly, shaking my head, whispering to myself that it was fine, just my imagination. But then I saw it. A small note, taped to the washing machine, the exact spot my phone had been. I froze, stomach twisting. The note was handwritten, in a cramped, precise scrawl. "Nice try locking your door. I'll find another way next time." Cold dread seeped into my bones. I ran upstairs, grabbed my parents' landline, and called the police. They promised to send a patrol car immediately, but when they arrived, there was nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, no note. It was as if the house itself had swallowed it whole. Sleep became impossible. I started leaving lights on, doors open, cameras running constantly. I couldn't relax, couldn't eat in peace. Every notification on my phone, every unknown number, sent waves of panic through me. Even with Solana behind bars, I realized that the true terror wasn't her. It was the idea that she could exist, that someone could watch, wait, and plan. That monsters don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they slip into your life wearing a calm smile, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Work became a refuge, oddly enough. The routine, the structure, gave me a sense of control I didn't have at home. But even there, I felt her presence in subtle ways. A glance across the warehouse, a shadow at the edge of the parking lot, a fleeting movement that made my pulse spike. Friends joked about my paranoia, but I couldn't help it. My mind had been rewired by that night. I was constantly aware of exits, shadows, the weight of silence. Months later, after the case had concluded, I finally tried to reclaim some sense of normalcy. I started meeting friends for coffee, letting myself laugh again, trying to trust strangers in public spaces. But I drew a line. No dating apps, no invites into my private space from strangers, not even for a moment. And even then, I couldn't fully let go. Every time my phone buzzed, every time someone knocked at the door unexpectedly, my stomach dropped. The memory of her laughter, the way she had watched me, lingered like a phantom. I learned, in the hardest way possible, that danger doesn't always wear a mask. It can look ordinary, even kind. It can make you laugh. It can seem safe. It can earn your trust before stripping it all away. Solana wasn't just a girl from a dating app. She was a lesson, one I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Even now, years later, I sometimes wake in the middle of the night, sweating, heart racing. I reach for my phone to check messages, and for a moment I feel her presence, as if she's watching from just beyond the door, waiting for the perfect moment to remind me of how close she once was. The silence before the click of the shutter, the stillness of the air in my basement, the faint warmth of a smile hiding intent. I'll never forget it. And I've promised myself, no matter how lonely, no matter how quiet, I will never again invite a stranger into my private space. Because monsters, as I learned, don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look just like Claire. I never thought I'd be back on Tinder. After my last relationship ended years ago, I promised myself I was done with dating apps for good. The cycle had exhausted me. Late night swiping, matching with people I wasn't really interested in, and watching every conversation die after a few messages. I convinced myself I was better off meeting someone the old-fashioned way, in real life, at bars, the gym, through friends, anywhere but an app. But real life didn't seem to care about my rules. I lived in Brentford, Ohio, a city big enough to feel anonymous but small enough that I kept bumping into the same people over and over. My social circle had shrunk to a few work friends, and the walls of my small apartment felt like they were closing in on me. It was Marcus, my longtime buddy, who finally broke my stubbornness. "Dude, just try it," he said one night over beers. "Worst case, it's the same old crap and you delete the app again. But maybe this time it's different." I wanted to roll my eyes, but his words stuck. The next morning I re-downloaded Tinder. I didn't expect much. The first few days were the same as always. Awkward small talk, half-hearted bios, and people who seemed more interested in validation than actually meeting. Then I matched with her. Hannah. Blonde hair, green eyes, a soft smile that didn't feel staged. 4 pictures, one with a coffee cup, another sitting on the grass with her dog, a close-up selfie, and one in front of a bookstore in a denim jacket. She wasn't flashy, wasn't filtered to death. Something about her profile felt grounded, real. Her bio was simple, but it hit me. Introvert, trying to be social. Coffee, cocktails, bookstore, bar, dog, everyone. I smiled. This was someone I could actually talk to. I opened with the simplest message I could think of. "Okay, but what's your go-to coffee order? This feels important." She replied almost instantly. "Depends. Am I having a good day or a bad day?" And just like that, the conversation flowed. She was sharp, funny, sarcastic in a playful way. We joked about bad Tinder bios, swapped book recommendations, and talked about how small Brentford could feel sometimes. By the second day, we were messaging nonstop. She asked about my work, my family, even small details like my dog's name. When I asked for her number, she hesitated. "I don't really give my number out right away," she said. "Hope that's not weird." I played it cool. "Not weird at all. Where do you prefer to chat?" "Snapchat," she said. I wasn't a Snapchat person anymore, but I downloaded it again just for her. Her username popped up. I added her back. The first snap came through. Proof I'm real. It was her. The same girl from Tinder. Same green eyes. Same soft smile. I was cautious, but relieved. I asked for another snap. Thumbs up or peace sign. She opened it instantly and held up a peace sign for a full minute. Finally, some sense of normalcy. A few days later, she suggested we meet. "You should come hang out. My roommates are out of town and it's too quiet here." She sent an address across town, about 20 minutes from me. I checked her location on Snap Map. Her Bitmoji was right there. That eased my nerves. I told her I'd be there soon. When I arrived, the house looked older, neglected, with chipped paint and overgrown grass. No cars were in the driveway. I sent her a snap. "Here." No reply. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. Knocked louder. Still nothing. Then I heard it. A voice. Sharp. Cutting. "What are you doing there?" An older woman, late 60s maybe, stood across the street. "I'm meeting someone," I said cautiously, walking toward her. Her expression darkened. "Nobody lives in that house. It's been empty for years." I froze. "What do you mean?" She gave me the address. The exact same one Hannah had sent. "Positive," she said firmly. "The last person who lived there? She died. Young girl, drugs." I stumbled back to my car, my chest tightening. My stomach churned. I opened Snapchat one last time. Hannah had blocked me. Her Tinder profile was gone too. At home, I sank into my desk chair, heart hammering. I pulled up the screenshots I had taken of her Tinder profile. I sent them to Marcus and a few friends. "Anyone know this girl?" Marcus replied immediately. "That's Lisa Baker." Another friend chimed in. "Yeah, Lisa. OD'd years ago. I went to her funeral." I stared at the screen. feeling my chest constrict. The girl smiling in those snaps, the peace sign, the soft green eyes, was Lisa, dead for years. And yet, I had been talking to her. The terror didn't come from the app, the blocking, or even the photos. It came from standing on that porch, knocking on a door that hadn't been opened in years, and realizing something, had lured me there. For what? I still can't imagine. After that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The real one, the dead one, smiling back at me through the glow of my phone. I kept replaying the events, wondering if I had imagined parts of it. But the address, the screenshots, the messages, they were all real. And that porch, that empty, silent house, it haunted me more than any dream ever could. I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe it was someone pretending to be Lisa, someone with too much time on their hands. A sick joke. I even thought about how easily someone could find my location on Snap Map and use it to lure me. But rationality only helped so much. The lingering unease in my chest refused to go away. For the next few days, I avoided my phone. I deleted Snapchat again, closed Tinder permanently, and even considered uninstalling social media entirely. Every notification felt like a potential trap. Every message from an unknown number made my heart pound. But life has a way of forcing you to engage, even when you want to retreat. Then came the first message. It was a text from an unknown number. "Did you enjoy visiting me?" I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking so violently, I couldn't pick it up for several minutes. The number couldn't be traced. When I tried calling, it went straight to voicemail. I changed my number the next day, but the damage was already done. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. Footsteps outside my door, the creak of the floorboards, even the hum of the refrigerator. I called Marcus, telling him everything. "It's like she knew exactly where to find me," I said, voice trembling. "And it made me go to that house. What if she hadn't blocked me? What would have happened?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You need to stop thinking of it as a person," he said finally. "You can't reason with this. Treat it like a presence, someone or something that wants to scare you." But I couldn't. It wasn't just fear, it was curiosity. I kept going over the screenshots, the messages, the snaps. There were details I hadn't noticed the first time. The way her eyes seemed slightly too wide, the way her smile didn't reach them at certain angles. Small things that, in hindsight, felt unnatural, wrong. One night, a week later, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. I froze, heart in my throat. It was a Snapchat notification. I didn't recognize the username, just 4 letters, Lisa. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I shoved the phone under my pillow and stared at the ceiling, listening to every creak, every distant hum. Hours passed. Nothing happened. I told myself I was safe, that the app was glitching, that it was a random notification. But when I woke the next morning, the sense of being watched hadn't left. I looked around my apartment and noticed something strange. My desk chair, the one I'd left facing the wall, was turned slightly toward the door. My heart leapt into my throat. I hadn't moved it. I never leave it facing the door. I started noticing small things over the next few days. My keys were in the kitchen, on the counter, though I always put them in the drawer. My wallet, lying on the couch instead of the shelf. The feeling wasn't just paranoia, it was certainty. Someone, or something, was in my apartment, watching, waiting. I began sleeping with a baseball bat under my pillow. I checked the locks on every door and window 3 times before going to bed. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every creak in the floor made my heart stop. Then came the day I almost saw her. I was in the kitchen, pouring a cup of coffee, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the living room. Just a flicker, like someone stepping between the blinds and the wall. I froze, gripping the mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Hello?" I called, voice shaking. No response. The movement stopped. I told myself it was my imagination, my fear manifesting physically. But when I walked into the living room, there was something on the floor. My phone, face up, and on the screen, a snap. It was her, the dead Lisa, grinning in the same soft, unnerving way. Behind her, the old Brentford house loomed in shadows. The caption read, "Miss me?" I dropped the phone. My hands were trembling uncontrollably. I called Marcus immediately, barely able to form words. She's here. She knows I'm here. He cut me off. "You need to leave," he said firmly. "Pack some stuff. Get to a hotel, anywhere safe. Don't go home until you've figured this out. This isn't normal, man. None of this is normal." I left everything behind. My laptop, my dog, even some clothes. I grabbed essentials and drove to a hotel on the outskirts of town. The lights of the city blurred through tears. I didn't sleep. I didn't dare. Every noise outside made me flinch. For weeks, I stayed at the hotel, leaving only during daylight, never alone. The messages stopped, but the memory lingered. I couldn't look at Tinder, Snapchat, or any dating app without feeling a chill crawl up my spine. I told myself I was safe, that it was over. But the fear, the memory of that porch, the way her eyes had seemed to follow me, it never left. Months later, I tried to return to some normalcy. Social gatherings, work, errands. I forced myself to live like nothing had happened. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I'd feel that presence again, in the corner of a store, behind a glass window, or even just a shadow crossing the street. And sometimes, late at night, I'd swear I saw her smile on my phone screen, waiting, reminding me that the line between life and death, or reality and something else, was thinner than I ever wanted to imagine. I never went back on Tinder. I never downloaded Snapchat again, and I never stopped looking over my shoulder. Because the thing I realized, the terrifying truth, was this. It wasn't about meeting someone online. It was about being chosen, targeted, lured. And some forces, some presences, don't need a reason to exist. They just want to remind you that you are not safe. Even now, I sometimes wonder, if I had gone to that house alone, if I had knocked on that door, what would have happened? I don't want to know. But the memory of it, the quiet, the waiting, the dead girl smiling through my phone, stays with me every day. And I know, deep down, she's still out there, somewhere, watching, maybe waiting for the next person foolish enough to think this time it will be different. I never thought I'd find myself back on Tinder. After my last relationship imploded years ago, I promised myself I was done with dating apps forever. They felt shallow, artificial, like swiping through people's lives instead of living my own. But loneliness doesn't ask permission. It creeps in, silent, patient, and suddenly the quiet apartment I'd once loved felt suffocating. My social circle had dwindled down to just a handful of coworkers, and the walls of my small apartment in Brentford, Ohio, were closing in. It was Marcus, my buddy from work, who finally pushed me over the edge. "Worst case," he said one night over beers, "you delete it again in a week. Best case, who knows?" That's all it took. The next morning, I re-downloaded Tinder, expecting nothing. The first couple of days were the same as always. Awkward small talk, half-hearted profiles, people looking for validation instead of connection. Then she appeared. Hannah. Blonde hair, green eyes, soft smile, photos that felt natural, real. A coffee cup in hand, a dog beside her, sunlight hitting her face in just the right way. And her bio, it wasn't overdone, didn't try too hard. Introvert trying to be social, coffee, cocktails, bookstores, dog, everyone. I couldn't explain why, but I smiled. She felt different. I sent a simple opener. Me. "Okay. What's your go-to coffee order?" Her reply was instant. "Depends. Am I having a good day or a bad day?" And just like that, the conversation flowed. Sharp, playful, funny, a little sarcastic. We joked about bad Tinder bios, the weirdness of Brentford, books we'd read. By the second day, we were messaging constantly, and she suggested meeting. "Come hang out," she wrote. I hesitated. Normally, I would have insisted on a coffee shop first, somewhere public, but she said, "My roommates are out. Too quiet here. Just come by." There it was, the mix of thrill and nervousness. I liked the idea, even if my instincts whispered otherwise. I agreed. Her address was across town, a quiet street, a small house with overgrown grass. It didn't seem dangerous at first glance. My snap map confirmed she was there. I told myself I was being cautious. I knocked on the door. Silence. No lights. No answer. I called through Snapchat. It rang endlessly. My heart thumped, a low, uneasy rhythm. Then a voice, sharp, cutting, from across the street. "What are you doing there?" I turned. An older woman stood in her yard staring. "I'm meeting someone," I said cautiously. She shook her head. "Nobody lives in that house. It's been empty for years." I froze. "Are you sure?" "Positive," she said firmly. "The last person who lived there died. Drugs." My chest tightened. I stumbled back to my car, cold sweat running down my back. I looked at Snapchat again. Her profile was gone. Blocked me. Deleted. I'd been lured. I couldn't shake it. Even after getting back to my apartment, the memory of that empty house haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cracked paint, the overgrown grass, the way that street had seemed too silent, too perfect, and worst of all, the way that fake Hannah had seemed alive, real, almost too real. I tried to calm myself. Maybe it was just a prank, someone messing with me because I'd given my address, but the thought didn't make me feel safe. It made my stomach twist. That night, I double-checked the locks on every door and window. My sister, Sophie, was visiting, and I told her to stay in her room with the door locked. I kept a baseball bat by my bed, phone fully charged, and every light in the house on. Even with all that, sleep was impossible. My mind kept wandering back to that smile, that peace sign in her Snapchat photo, the way she had drawn me out. It was calculated, intentional. Around midnight, I heard it. A soft creak from the kitchen. My heart stopped. I froze, straining to hear over the thudding in my chest. Another creak, closer this time. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering to the operator what I thought was happening. "Stay calm," the voice on the line said. "Tell me where you are." I whispered my address, moving quietly toward Sophie's room. I nudged her awake, whispering, "Someone's in the house. Hide in the closet." She bolted upright, eyes wide with fear, trembling violently. I ushered her into the closet, crouched behind her, trying not to breathe too loudly. The creaks came again. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, heavy. Someone was moving upstairs. "Stay quiet," I hissed. Sophie whimpered but obeyed. The steps paused outside her door. Then a deep, cold voice. "I know you're in there. I can smell you." Sophie gasped. I pressed my hand over her mouth. My pulse thundered in my ears. My mind raced through every possible escape. The operator instructed me to stay hidden, stay silent, and wait for the police to arrive. The banging on the door started. Hard, forceful. Whoever it was, they weren't just walking around. They were testing, trying to intimidate, trying to make us move. Sophie started to cry quietly. I whispered, "It's okay. Police are coming. Just stay still." Then the laughter came. Low, cruel, chilling. It made my blood run cold. It wasn't a laugh of someone playing a prank. It was a predator. A calculated, patient predator. And for a moment the world went silent except for the ringing in my ears. Minutes later, hours maybe, I heard sirens. Red and blue lights reflected through the blinds. I opened the closet, whispered to Sophie, "Police are here. It's safe." We bolted to the door, flung it open, and let the officers in. They searched the house thoroughly. Nothing. No intruder. No footprints. Nothing beyond a few bent window latches at the back of the house. The officers said whoever it was probably ran when Sophie yelled about the police. They urged us to stay somewhere else for the night. We ended up at my friend Daniel's apartment, still shaking, still haunted. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that fake Hannah again, smiling, holding up her phone, watching me. The realization hit hard. Someone had been inside my house, watching, learning. Someone knew exactly where I lived. The next few days were tense. I changed my locks, installed cameras, and never let Sophie out of sight. My phone felt like both a lifeline and a liability. Every notification made me jump. Every shadow in my apartment made my chest tighten. Weeks later, I checked social media, looking for any sign of Hannah. Nothing. No profile. No traces. Nothing. It was as if she'd never existed. But the memory of that night stayed. It didn't fade. It wouldn't. And I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just about catfishing. She, or he, had studied me, found my weaknesses, waited for the perfect moment. The peace sign, the fake profile, the lure to an empty house. It had all been part of a plan. I never went back on Tinder. I stopped trusting random messages, profiles, strangers online. Every time my phone buzzed, every time someone knocked on the door unexpectedly, I jumped, heart racing, and deep down, I knew the truth. The worst part wasn't just that I could have been hurt that night. The worst part was knowing that someone out there could do it again. And maybe they already had. Even now, years later, when I walk past empty houses on quiet streets, when my phone lights up with a message from someone new, the memory creeps in. That calculated smile, the peace sign, the quiet house. The way someone had watched, waited, and vanished without a trace. It was vigilance, panic, and a phone line to someone trained to respond. And that night changed me forever. Someone out there knew exactly where I lived. And the knowledge of that, the idea that I wasn't as safe as I thought, that anyone, anywhere could pretend to be anyone and walk right into my life, has stayed with me ever since. I never answered another Tinder message. I never met another stranger alone. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the house is quiet, I still hear the echo of footsteps I never saw, and a soft laugh I hope I imagined.